I have absolutely no idea how this part has not driven me crazy, unless it did drive me crazy, and I am now crazy. I don't think I'm crazy. Well, okay, so maybe it didn't actually drive me crazy, but it was definitely tedious. This is going to be our subject for today. Holy crap, it does not fit in frame. Just like the last episode on the helmet, this is obviously not finished yet, but it's in a state we can talk about where I'm at with it. This is the backpack for the Black Templar that we are building. I am building. So 2 episodes ago, I covered the construction of, well, what's left of the actual mold itself. You can see I'm starting to tear it apart. I needed pieces off of it. So I don't want to waste your time covering that, so we'll do an insanely quick recap. Made the entire thing out of cardboard. Drew up some 1x1 squares, figured out my scaling, drew it all out on there, did front and side profile, turned the whole thing into a 3D model, wrapped it in plastic wrap, duct tape, made a duct tape template, just like everything else. If you've watched the other videos, you've seen it. If you've watched 2 episodes ago, you saw that specifically. Now that we're all caught up with that, how did I actually make this thing then? I mean, same way I've made everything else, I guess. So let's go through the B-roll. We'll talk about whatever I can think of. Alright, so where we last left off, I had the duct tape template all ready to go. I think I was out of foam, and I didn't want to cut up the template in case I messed anything up. So finally got some foam, started cutting it apart. Yeah, so not only did I have like photos and video reference from when I had previously made it, but I still, even though I took the template off, I still have like the model itself, so I can always reference where one piece goes, where an angle is and stuff when I'm done. So was no huge problem of figuring out what went where, what angle cuts were needed. There was one change that I ended up doing from the last time I talked about this. I had lowered the point of where I was going to connect because in that episode, I guess I will have to show it, I had messed up when I was making this thing. What I had done was the bottom portion here, I had accidentally flipped backwards compared to the top portion. So there's not a huge difference between the front and back on the bottom half. It's just that there's an angle on one side and the other side's flat. So originally I had drawn the line along here, and I had worries that it wasn't going to stay consistent in terms of me getting that perfect. So I found the next best spot to do that instead, which was right here, because I had more of a reference in terms of all the angles and stuff. Because so not only is your side angled inward, but then the front is angled down, so that entire thing is an entire straight line. You have the entire half of the thing to get all that figured out, so it's a lot less likely to screw up, you know what I mean, to get it all cockeyed. Yeah, so anyway, no more talking about this for now. So anyway, started tracing all the pieces out. There were a couple angle cuts here and there. Not anything specific I can talk about that's fancy. The inner back piece definitely had a bit of a complex bend to it because it's got about like 5 or 6 curves. Obviously, when I traced everything out to foam, I made sure that I had labeled everything, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, so I knew what sequence pieces went to, or what sequence everything went in order. I started with the entire top half first, obviously. Top rounded bit was a little tricky. I made sure to do one whole piece first, just because my cuts on the duct tape template weren't perfect. I took a ruler, I made sure I kind of straightened out some of the lines, because it was supposed to be straight on both sides. And then once I knew for sure I got all that figured out, I cut that out, and then I flipped the whole piece that I had cut out and traced it, cut that one out as well. Made sure to keep note of all my registration marks so everything would line up later. If I remember right, I think I cut all of that straight on the sides. I think, yeah, I cut at 45 on the front and back because of how steep those inward bends are. They were 90 degrees. And then came time to do the inner details of the top vents on the backpack. From what it looked like on a figure, there was just a recessed bit. So what I did was I just cut that section out, and then I built like an inner piece underneath it, and then used the piece that I'd cut out, trimmed it down some, cut out the vent holes, then just applied that over top of the other thing. Once I glued together the top half and then the recessed bit, I just got like a regular square piece, and then I glued it behind the vents. My hope was that this would be enough to hold the shape, but it would kind of kink it a little bit. So I tried making a smaller piece in between in the middle to fit, and I think I screwed up and gave it an angle cut, and that made it even worse. I did fix this in the end though. Before I started bending everything, I laid it out flat and put some hot glue in there just so when it went to bend, it had nowhere to really go, so that there weren't any kinks, and that worked. Reference for next time, just don't do that again. Once I had that whole vent piece and recessed bit all done, I went to do the outer pieces that I had already cut out. Just gave it a crap ton of contact cement, that way the excess of the lip on the recessed bit would have a lot of surface to grab, because I wanted this whole thing to be like one tight unit that would just kind of like flap around. So it's more or less one giant sheet with a bunch of layers of other sheets on it. There's probably a much easier way I could have done this. I do believe lining it up beforehand, I did mark everything where I wanted to go so it would be as close to what I needed. But once I had that glued in, I attached both the front hole and the back hole. Made sure I kind of gave everything a good bend to make sure all corners were all pressed together with the contact cement. Once I had that entire section done, came time to do the corners of the backpack. Not the jetpacks, but the actual like 45-degree corners on the ends where the jetpack thingies would connect. Jetpacks, exhausts, whatever they are. Yeah, so these were, I think, 45-degree angles, or 45-degree cuts on the whole way around. Which, yeah, makes sense because it's a 45 off of the top piece and then a 90 on the side. So it would have been a 45-degree cut on that whole thing. Then for the inner side pieces, that would have also been a 45-degree cut, except for the very bottom, that would have been a 45-degree out, because it's going to be touching the bottom side, and that's going to be a straight. So it's straight 45, so that bottom's going to be out 45. Yeah, then next came the side pieces, cut them out, glued them ahead of time on there. That way everything started to slowly hold its shape. I reinforced as much of this on the inside with hot glue as I could, just because I wanted to help hold its shape a little better. So anytime before I put anything on, if it seemed like it was going to become a hard to reach spot later, I gave it like quick layer of hot glue just on the seams on the inside. And you can see that I'm doing that for both the front and back inner pieces and everything else as well. just in case if it gets any kind of push, bend, or anything, it's a lot harder to break loose. That will help hold everything from the back end. But once those got all glued on, the entire top half was then complete. I went through one more time with hot glue and a little flashlight just to reach any spots that I couldn't get before or were done after I'd started putting the fronts and sides together. And from there, just had to put together the bottom half. That ended up being, yeah, since it's 90-degree angles on the ends, and been 45-degree cuts on all 4 corners, except for that slope in the front. One would have been a flat, one would have been a 45, just to get that 45. But our ends are obviously 90 degrees, so cut those out, glued them together as well. I also added a couple reinforcement pieces in the center. That way it didn't bow so much. They were kind of like last minute thoughts. Would they actually do any good? I don't know. I wasn't 100% sure on how I was going to do mounting at that point. So I figured worst case scenario, like best case scenario, it would help in that way somehow. I don't think it did, but maybe it did, or maybe it does in the end, I'm not sure. But I figured at the very least, structurally it helps hold the center so it doesn't have so much bow to it. So after that came the part that actually did start driving me insane, and that was the little circular jetpack pieces on the side. First things first, I had to make another cardboard template for this. I'd saved a circle piece from before. I had referenced it somewhere else to some other piece of it, but oh no, the cat. Sable, oh geez. We are on another cat break. Where are you trying to go? You trying to come to me? Come here. No? You just want to mess everything up. How long will it be till she starts knocking everything over? Nah, she looks like she's gonna lay down now. Okay. Camera's okay-ish. Alright, so what was I talking about? Me going insane. There we go. So, I had to make another cardboard template just for these circles. Now, they're not obviously full circles. I'll pull this thing up. Okay. So, but you can see partial circle, another partial circle. Oh my god, this is so... But yeah, so it's like a circle wrapped in another circle with a cylinder in the bottom, and it's not a full round shape. So anyway, yes, I needed to make basically a giant sphere, and then I was gonna have to make another one on top of that, and then figure out all my shapes from there. Now, you're coming here. Okay, no, there we go. Okay, cat's on my lap. That's all she wanted. So this was the same process as everything else. You know, I took the shape of the circle, being a perfect sphere, then I just took a copy of that, split it in half, so I'd had that as my center, and then more or less cut that in half as well, and then just started making traces of quarter circles the entire way around until I had a full half dome. Duct tape template process, wrapped in plastic wrap, duct tape, and then started working out a pattern with that. Since I didn't really need to use everything, I think I only used a quarter of that template, which ended up being an eighth of the circle, I think. Would that have been 1, 2, 3, 4? Yes, an eighth. Then of course I need to make 2, which means I had to do 16 of these. 16 of these twice. So now you're seeing where the insanity came from. It's just so many sheets of foam. I posted this on Facebook and I was like, I have no idea how I did not go insane. I did, I don't know. So I just tried fitting as many of those templates out on my sheet of foam as possible. It's just do. And I think it took a sheet and a half just for the first round. And then I methodically just kept cutting all of them out. I mean, as fast as humanly possible. Thankfully, there was no angle cuts on any of these. They were all straight cuts, so I just cut everything out first individually and then cut out all the V's afterwards. And then came the tedious part of gluing that all together. Again, not fun. Getting into the cracks of every one of those V's. I mean, so what, there's 16 pieces there. Each one has 4 on top of that. I don't want to do math, but that's a lot of how many freaking V's I had to get into just to glue. But anyway, yes, after that, glued it all together and made 2 domes. I mean, they were a little lopsided here and there, but it's nothing perfect. It didn't matter, they were close enough, and when it came time to cutting them up and everything, I could just find the best part of them and then just hide the rest. Slowly started gluing them all together. No registration marks needed because of the way I had the template cut out with all the V's. I could just line up everything together and everything just came out fine. Then once I had the 2 domes made, I had to kind of figure out where I was going to be cutting this, because they were a little big, which was fine because I figured I could then use them as the outer piece, like the outer shell of the domes, since there was going to be an inner piece. But these were only like a little less, I think, than half of a circle, or half of a dome. So really I was making a whole dome and I didn't even need that much, but I don't know. So it took some time to kind of figure out, referencing the figure, like lining it up with the backpack that I had made so far, trying to figure out where everything should go, at what angle, how high, how low. But eventually I found something I was happy with and I started cutting it all out. And from there, I got to do that one process before all over again, another 16. I think all I did was I had slightly cut down the template from before. I brought in both the sides, all 3 sides of the 1/8 template. I didn't need to go crazy short, and what I did was fine. It was enough. No magic math, it's just guesswork, and somehow I guessed right. And I had to glue all of those together on top of that, which made another set of globes, domes, balls, whatever. So once I had them made, I then started attaching the original dome on top of it, and then figuring out how much you need to cut off of the base, because it's not a full globe. It has like a stop point at a certain point in the bottom, and then turns into a like an oval for the exhaust jet, whatever that thing is. The more I talk into this, the more you're gonna find out I'm more of a casual Warhammer fan. I don't know what half of this crap does. I mean, I think they're power packs, but I think for some of them they are jet packs, but others they're just provide power for the armor suit. It's weird. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, once I got that figured out and cut out around the bottom, I kind of figured out like a basic dome shape to recess up inside of that on the bottom to help hold it shape. That way nothing was too flimsy. Made sure I had that perfectly round, or perfectly-ish. Glued it out, stuck it in. Then gave it a nice layer of hot glue just to reinforce that shape as well. Make sure nothing comes loose or pops loose. Since I can't really show it on here, so on the figure, there's like this tiny little recessed bit before the actual trimming of like the little jetpack exhaust pad. Yeah, so what I did was I made a smaller circle based off of the previous one that I had in the base, that I had shoved down into the base of that, and then I had wrapped up a like a 2-inch trim piece around it. That way it was, when I glued the whole thing to the bottom of the little jetpack piece, it was still slightly recessed. And then once I had that glued together and glued on, then I could take the one more piece around that and have it slightly down, and then that would be flush with the actual base of the dome. So you would have like a dome, slight recess bit, and then a straight trim around the exhaust port, or whatever that is. Once I had that made, I think I made the same, used the same exact pieces that I used as a reference point, like template-wise. I think I used those to make another set that was closed off on both sides, and then I was going to use them for the attachment for it in the corner to be attached onto the backpack. Tried finding a center line on the sides of the backpack. I think I just went by similar corners and then kind of like found a center on the circle, more or less by folding the circle in half to make it even, and then I could use that to find the center of the circle piece, line that up, circle it around. But I think I had made that attachment piece a hair too long, which was fine in the end because I was already shoving part of it into the domes on the sides, and I was like, well, I might as well shove it into the backpack as well. That way it has a little more hold, I guess. So as I was kind of fidgeting out the length and everything, I ended up cutting out the holes in the side of the backpack. That way I could slide it in, and I kind of figured out, referencing, the action figure, how far in it needed to be, which is almost the entire way. There was only maybe a half-inch gap between it and the backpack. Gluing them in was a little bit of a pain because obviously contact cement, you wait for it to dry, and then once it touches, it's glued together. So I'd try and put it in, but obviously it would get hung up because it started sticking. So what I would do is I'd have one dry, and then I would glue the crap out of the other, and then I'd slide it into place, check it, before it would dry. I would take painter's tape, and I would just tape everything in place so nothing could fall and sag out. I think once that was done, I just gave it real quick coat of hot glue all around just to make sure everything stayed afterwards. But anyway, that got the base shape of everything done, and after that came time to do the detailing. Giant circle in the back, little jetpacks in the bottom corner, stuff on the sides. So anyway, making the dome was just like before. More circle templates, more dome templates, except this time it was a lot more shallow, and it was shorter. It might have been bigger, but it was shallow and only 1/2. I was gonna have to do the outer cuts with a really, really deep 45, probably deeper than a 45. I went almost as deep as I could just to get that angle as steep as possible, because I want that angle to lay flat on the mounting of that dome so that everything else can really rise up off of it. And it worked out pretty good. But yeah, cut them all out, glued them together. That got me my dome shape. It was a little high in the center, but I fixed that later. And then just to figure out how high I needed the raised cylinder for it to sit on, I just went by how deep the recessed bit in the front was. I think it ended up being 2 inches, maybe 2.5. I just glued that on top of the dome, made sure everything kind of fit as well around as possible. I probably could have made these little holes in the template first, but I didn't because I wasn't thinking about it, because I never think ahead. So these were a little fun. I just made a circular pattern and then hit the corner of tried getting as center as I could on the actual line itself. Yeah, nothing super special to say about that. It was just, I could have gone about it better. I pretty much ended up cutting everything out just to make it again and glue it back on. It was tedious, but nowhere near as tedious as making 100 domes. While I was waiting for the glue for that to dry, I started making some of the side stuff. Couple weird little basic squares that were just there for texture, I guess. Glued them on real quick. They're gonna have some extra crap on them too that I will take care of later. Let's see, then before I attached the dome to the body, or to the backpack, I knew there was gonna be a lot of hard to reach spots, so I cleaned it up first with a Dremel, and I went to town on it from every angle I could, because I knew afterwards I wasn't gonna be able to touch anything. I just gave it a modest amount of contact cement and pressed it down as hard as I could. Thankfully, because I did have that little piece on the inside to kind of reinforce it, I could actually apply a good amount of pressure on it to get everything evenly pressed without the whole thing just squeezing. Then came time for more side details. Same thing as what I did 2 minutes ago. This time though was for the lower half. I just took a random piece of foam, put it up against the side, traced it, and I just took off like a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch all around. And after putting that on, when I thought all of the tediousness was done, it was not. Came time to do all the little jets or whatever on the bottom half, all 4 of them, which meant I had to do the mounting pieces, which were blocks, and then the little exhaust port thingies on top of that, which were also blocks. So I transitioned from doing circles to squares, from domes to cubes. It was a living nightmare. Practically everything on these was just all 45s because it was all going to be a block in the end. Well, at least for the mounting pieces. And thankfully I didn't have to do any freaking math to figure that out on how they were going to be, because they just attached straight to it, and then that was my angle. For the mounting ones at least. Did some basic math to figure out how far apart I wanted everything to be, because obviously the giant squares are going to hit each other if I get the mounting blocks too close. Once I figured out the angle on top of that where I was going to need the giant blocks to be based off of that, cut that all at an angle, then made a piece for the inside so it could be all nice and flush. And then once I had that all figured out, I was like, well, they are the right angle, but they're sticking out too far. And I had one of 2 options. Either I cut the inner blocks short, or I just cut a hole in it and slide it as far as in and out as I want until I get it where I need it. That's what I ended up doing. It's not pretty because you can obviously right now see the blocks inside the outer blocks, but that'll be cleaned up. That's no big deal. According to my figure, there is a slight change in angle between the bottom ones and the top ones. Not major. I mean, I'm not super happy with these. I might, if I have time, fix them up and make them better. But for right now, they're in a state. At least they're not done, but they're done-ish, and that gets them somewhere where they're workable, if that makes any sense. So once I had all that done, came time to just do more gluing. Shoved them all in, try and get an idea of how far they stuck out. I want to say it was probably 1 inch each. And then cleaned everything up with the Dremel first before putting it on, because there's no way I was going to Dremel in there afterwards. And then just attached them all on. And then from there I already had everything marked on the side of the backpack where I wanted each one to be. So once they were all glued, I just pressed them all on. Everything was fine from there. But yeah, so from there I wanted to figure out the height of the mounting for this backpack. So I somehow found a way to fasten the entire chest and shoulders and shove it on top of the back of this chair. Once I had that all on, I kind of just hung it up there and was referencing my camera and monitor, see how it looked sticking up, then compared that to the action figure to figure out how high it needed to be. Once I found that out, on the back there's like a giant square for mounting. I kind of found where I wanted that, and it lined up pretty much perfect along the bottom line of the inner back. So I just made a straight line on that, reference that, and then tried making a template to figure out like the exact center of that, so I could get the exact center of the back on the body. And then I made a template for that more or less traced the entire back square on the back of the chest. This would get all the openings and everything else that was already on it. And then I realized that I was gonna want one more piece, because there's like one big giant cutout in the top center, and I knew that might give it some swing, so I wanted something else in the bottom as well. So I made like a small circle. That way I would have like that plus the circle, and I could shove it in like that. That would kind of help it from swaying side to side. Once I had that template made out, traced it to the back of the backpack, and then started making pieces for that. Since they are both more or less flat surfaces that just need to butt up against each other, I just got 2 layers of the thickest foam I had on hand, made one that would match the thickness of the foam on the back, and then one more that would be recessed on the inside with a little bit of a lip, both top and bottom. That way when I would shove it in, it would stick without glue. Later I will end up gluing it on, but for now I want to be able to put it on, take it off, and have at least be sturdy enough that I can do test fits with. And that worked, so I tried it all on to see how it all looked. And it looked freaking fantastic. The height was great. I don't think I had any problems with it being up too high. It was perfect. I want to say the back of the backpack was completely flush with my helmet. Like, it was exactly where I wanted it to be. Yeah, which is exactly where it is on the figure. It's almost exactly flush with the helmet. And that's what I have. That's what I wanted. It was dead nuts perfect. And this is the final result from that test fit. Pretty cool though, right? Obviously it's not done, still needs a lot of tweaking. Let's see, do we have any bits of note to talk about? Let's see. Yeah, so a couple things. You can see the little jetpack pieces here. I'm not super happy, even though they are slightly different angles on the figure. I don't like how this looks. I'm going to do something about it. I don't know what, but I'm going to do something. Obviously, you can still see the inner pieces there. That's going to get trimmed or just covered up. Inside here, I'm going to do some kind of grading, you know, to make that all flush, but maybe have it be recessed. Not sure exactly how I'm doing that yet, but I'll figure it out. Probably just make another circular piece there, draw out the grading, cut the grading out, and glue it in. And then, to make sure it holds its shape, I'll pop the gratings out afterwards. Otherwise it would get warped and the lines would be all squiggly. That's probably the best way to do it. Let's see. Kind of give an idea of the temporary / permanent mounting system. So let's see, there we go. The light's got it there. You can see there's like a tab here on the top. It's the same for the bottom. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So the shape of the hole is the inner piece, and then the outer piece is kind of the same thing, but it's extended a little bit in the top and bottom that way. It's a little tricky. What I have been doing, I'll slide the top in first, and then I made this a little longer on the bottom. So once it's like up and in, I'll take this, bend it out, and then push the back in, and then the whole thing's kind of locked in. It works. I think when I go to finally glue everything together, I'll end up gluing all this to the back, and then this will all kind of like, it'll reinforce it all. Still have detailing to do, obviously, with the internal piece here. There's supposed to be like tubes and stuff that come down. It's obviously not pretty. This is bowed a little bit in the bottom. Ton of cleanup work to do, but I'm happy with it for now. It's huge though. So that's it for the backpack. It's a backpack, I don't know. Very anticlimactic. What's coming up next? Right now, I am working on the sword. If you're following me on Facebook or literally anywhere else, you'll see that I have been, I just started this. this is intentionally offset. I go into detail on that, and I will explain it when I get this done and a video up for this too. But in the meantime, nothing fancy to say there. See you in the next one. The craziness is done, except once I start doing the chain for this. Kill me now.